Hey everybody, welcome to the InPsight Show. I am your host, Danielle Egnew, and you are a fly on the wall to everywhere. Hi guys, how are we? I hope your week is going great. I'm getting ready to get on an airplane to fly out to Port Orchard, Washington, where I'll be going to Bremerton with my cousin Sean, and we are going to be running karaoke for the Navy crew of the aircraft carrier USS Ronald Reagan. And I can't do this without my cousin because it's really hard. I'm not a karaoke host, you guys. It's so much easier, honest to God, to put on a full-blown rock concert for 20,000 people than it is to put on karaoke. I'm not even kidding. It's so difficult. So I'm really glad that my cousin Sean's going to be helping me. And I'm really honored, actually, to be able to entertain our troops and help them just blow off some steam for a holiday party. And, you know, you guys, it's just, I don't know. The whole entire podcast today is how to find joy when there's just nothing joyful to look at online and in the news. Because I guarantee you that there are things that there are joyful to look at in your life. And, you know, in the rare event that that's not true, sometimes people just have really heinous circumstances, okay? Even in a tenth of a second, there's something beautiful we can find about that. And this isn't a podcast about denying our hard circumstances or ignoring our pain or sweeping things under the rug or toxic positivity. Gang, this is about the spiritual physics of where we put our attention, you know? And I've got a lot of examples I'm going to bring forward on the podcast today because it's really hard not to just get in this bummer place with everything that's going on in the United States and in the world. And, you know, whether you think that the new New York mayor is amazing or you think he's the ruination of the country, it is fascinating to me how quickly we adhere to a message that we don't like, and we become that message. It's just insane. So back to this karaoke gig, right? So my cousin Tiffany calls me up she texts me and she's like, hey, do you and Sean want to do you guys want to do some karaoke? We do it. We've done it for the last 2 years for the USS Nimitz. And the Nimitz is named after the Navy's only 5-star admiral that they've ever had. And the Nimitz was commissioned in 1975, I believe, and it is the world's largest. It's an aircraft carrier, but it's a multi-purpose ship as well, and it's the world's largest warship. And I think this year might be its very last year. They may be decommissioning her because she's old, you know. But, I mean, it's iconic, this giant ship, this huge aircraft carrier, and they're like cities. I've never been on one, but my cousin, Sean, had been flown out to one time just as a civilian to check it out. And it's insane. Like they have 2 McDonald's and it's a nuclear ship. So this giant floating city is just wandering around out there with an airstrip on it. So I felt it was really kind of an honor to be providing all these sailors with just this opportunity to be stupid and sing, we built this city on rock and roll, and just be ridiculous and have fun. And it's just a party that they get to have for Christmas. So as we go out there for the USS Ronald Reagan, I think I had a friend of mine who I mentioned because they wanted me to do something this weekend. And I said, I can't. I'm going out to run karaoke, you know, with my cousin for this Navy vessel. And, you know, and I'll spare you the whole conversation. But my friend was kind of a jerk about it, to be honest with you. They were like, oh, well, if you're really into supporting war, the war machine, blah. And I'm like, you know what, man? I said, why don't you just chill out? How about these are human beings and they're serving our country? I wasn't going to be in the Navy. Actually, I tried to be in the Navy. I did try to be in the Maybe you don't know this story, but I'm sure I've told it on the podcast. But I tried to sign up for the Navy. I tried to enlist. I tried to enroll. And it was after the Twin Towers fell down and they were looking for Osama bin Laden. And I was in Pope Jane, and it was kind of the height of Pope Jane, really, right in that time frame. So I was so fired up and just marched down to my local recruiter here back in my hometown in Billings, Montana. And boy, did I go in there and I looked at that guy and I said, I would like to enlist in the Navy. And I was 33, and I think the cutoff was 35, right? And this guy looks at me, and you have to understand, you guys, Pope Jane was a pretty big band, okay? And we had made not just national splashes from Billings, Montana, but we made world splashes, and this was right before we were out getting signed and all the things. This guy, I walked in, you guys have to understand what I look like, okay? I had short hair. You know, it was that late 90s, early 2000s look. And it was full of sculpting wax. And it was in these points all over my head. And it was 3 colors. And so I literally looked like Lisa Simpson. And I go barreling in to the Navy recruiter and I say, I want to join the Navy. And this guy looks at me. And, you know, this was in the don't ask, don't tell time frame. And he clearly knows I'm gay because everybody on the earth at this point knows I'm gay. I mean, the band had been in Curve magazine and covered by every gay periodical on the earth and mainstream periodical on the earth. And he's looking at me. And he says, and I didn't even need to introduce myself. I'm sure he probably came to some Pope Jane shows and threw up in the alley with everybody else partying. But he looks at me and he says, Miss Egnew of Pope Jane, how may the Navy serve you today? And he just said it so condescendingly, and I was so pissed. And I'm like, and I was really honest to my detriment. I'm like, you know something? I have these abilities, and I can totally find Osama bin Laden. I can tell you where he is. And this guy just sat there with this, trying not to, his mouth was curled up, and he's trying really hard to be polite. And he's like, you can find Osama bin Laden with your mind. I said, yes, I totally can. But what I actually really want to do is be on a submarine. And I want to listen in the ocean. And I have crazy good hearing, which I do, guys. I have got this, it's part of my sixth sense. I have this sense of hearing that's weird. Like it hears through, I don't even know what. And I said, I can hear all the things in the water. Maybe we can discover deep sea life. And I'm going on and on and on. And this Navy guy's just looking at me. And I go on and I pitch my case to him and I said, so I'd like to sign up for the Navy. And he leans forward and he was being as kind as he could, okay? And he says, Miss Egnew, I can see that you are very emotional about what's happened in our country. And he says, and I am so honored that you would choose the Navy as your armed force of choice, he says. And then he says, this is a very large commitment, a commitment you can't back out of. He said, though I'm sure you've given this visit some thought, why don't you go home? And if 2 weeks you would still like to be part of the Navy, we would love to have you. And I looked at him and I said, are you just dismissing me? And he said, I am not dismissing you. He said, I have a feeling that you are acting on emotion. He said, and why don't you go home? And if you still would like to be in the Navy, in 2 weeks, we would absolutely love to have you. I later found out that at the time they weren't putting women on submarines, by the way, but he didn't even bother telling me that. So I went home. I chilled out. We booked some more Pope Jane gigs. On I went. But, I mean, if I was going to be in the armed forces, it would have been the Navy. So God bless that recruiter who just was like, oh, dude, you're going to get one of those unable to conform discharges. You'll be out of there. You'll be talking to somebody about their aura or, we really shouldn't shoot off these sonic weapons underwater because we're killing the dolphins. I know he saw that in me. I know he did. But anyway, I kind of got off track there. But that kind of actually has to do with our podcast topic today, which is finding the joy and the goodness where you can find it. Now, at the time, this guy could have been really rude. He could have been really rude to me because it's not like gay people were just walking in going, "Hi, I'm gay. I'm going to be in the military." I mean, there was the don't ask, don't tell. But he was trying to be as kind as he could and trying not to laugh me out of his recruiting office. That was the other thing. But, around all of that was this sense of kindness in this person. He didn't have an obligation to be kind to me. He wasn't going to sign me up for the Navy. He didn't have any obligation. He could have been like, "Hey, lady, out. You are not what we're looking for. Get out." I've known recruiters to be like that from other friends of mine who wanted to join and gentlemen who were told, "Oh, yeah, buddy, you're not even." No. The answer is no. Okay. So people at our core, you guys, and I know there's some of you that are going to disagree with me here. Yet, as somebody who sees into the architecture of human beings, I can tell you that we are a broken species. We are not an evil species. Now, there are some people that really do choose to do some pretty raunchy, evil stuff. But overall, we are a weak species. We are a scared species. We are a species who is afraid of our own shadow. Yet we are not evil, and I think that a lot of our behaviors stem from feeling like we're out of control, quite honestly. You look at the absolute inexcusable horror of human trafficking and these children who are victimized and all this Epstein stuff and just this disgusting, weird, predatory nature of some people. And you've got to wonder, what the hell is that about? Now, obviously, you guys, for those who are my mental health professionals out there, right? We do have people who are mentally ill, and those sociopathic disorders become pretty harsh when we're talking about victimizing other people and psychopathic disorders. But overall, I'm not talking about, the handful of folks who have a wiring problem in their noggin. I'm talking about the spiritual affect of human beings. And I really think this is important to talk about because we're at a really, I've talked about the tipping point that humanity is at many, many times. And I would even go as far as to say that we're past that tipping point. And what I'm talking about is what ship are you getting on? Which train are you just choose an analogy. Which platform of which train are you getting on? Which country are you headed to? Are you going to go to the I hate everybody and dig in? Or are you going to go to that camp? Or are you going to go to the camp of, well, that didn't work. Let's try to salvage what we've got and build. And we need to start salvaging now, guys. We need to start salvaging now. Now, I can hear some of you out there. I can hear you. I can feel you saying, you can't salvage this. It has to burn down. The whole thing has to burn down. It has to come down. Guys, I would like to talk to you a little bit about the spiritual principle of transcendence, okay? If you're a farmer, you're going to burn your crop to the ground, you're going to take those ashes, till it in, and you're going to grow something else. Problem with doing that with society is when we go to burn it down, the people who swoop in to take over and build a society are the ones with the most money, the ones who are crazy enough to believe that God anointed them to do that. Hello! We don't want those folks. Those are a little Crayola. That's in the Crayola box under the color crazy. So we don't want that. The only way that we get around that, if we were to burn it all down, the only way to get around folks coming in who would be heavier duty crazies is that they burn down too. And if we're burning it all down, if we're burning our financial system down and everything's going down to the quick, then you guys, we are in Mad Max land at that point. So there's no building back utopia when crazy people with, dune buggies and whatever AR whatevers are driving around taking your stuff. That's really hard to do that. So instead of having to go to the imbalanced masculine way of doing things. And I say imbalanced because the balanced masculine, you guys, is amazing. The balanced masculine is a protector, a provider, the keeper of the edge of women are the stewards of the spaces. The balanced masculine makes sure that those spaces on the outside are protected. Okay. So the balanced masculine is really, really gorgeous. And we have a lot of males who are working very hard on bringing in the balanced masculine. It is strength, but it is mushy compassion under there. That's the balanced masculine, all right? The imbalanced masculine is what came about when we damaged the masculine. And we talk a lot about the damage that we women have incurred over the generations. And right now, I'm doing a Deprogramming Doubt Women and Money class for just the ladies about how jacked up it's been for women the last 700 years, you guys. You can't own property. You couldn't even have a credit card till 1974. I mean, wow. It's been pretty raunchy. So obviously, we address the needs of our gals. One of the things that, I'm big on balance, you guys, in case you haven't noticed. If you've been listening to this podcast for 8 years, you will know I'm big on balance. And one of the things I see is the great imbalance in the masculine because of the damage that we have done to the masculine. And I address this periodically on this podcast, but if things don't happen on their own, you guys, okay, that's just not how it works. So we've got this imbalanced masculine energy that wants to dominate. It wants to subjugate because throughout this last damaging 700-year period where we just took all these financial and social rights away from women, the same thing that was going on is we were really, really pumping men up to be something they were never going to be able to be. These superhuman beings that were supposed to be able to do everything and fix everything and manage everything, and 100% of the world rested on their shoulders, and they weren't supposed to cry, and they weren't supposed to have emotions, and they were supposed to be this automaton producer of money and crops and everything and never stop, and there I am, I'm Superman. Hello. That person with the XY chromosome set is human. They're going to get tired. And I mean this with love, gentlemen. A Y chromosome, you guys, is missing a leg. Otherwise, it's an X chromosome. So these poor guys are getting all this stuff poured on them back in the day and being told they should be able to handle every single thing under the sun with one less chromosomal leg. For help. I mean, and gentlemen, I'm not calling you disabled. I'm not saying there is a disability here. I'm just saying, wow, that was a lot. Okay. I mean, if we're strictly talking science, the extra chromosomal leg for females not only has productive capabilities, it also has both of our hemispheres of our brain working at the same time. It has all kinds of things in there. So here we're dumping all this stuff on men. And instead of just taking a balance, and this was the Western world, guys. This is the Western world. Our indigenous nations, damn, they kept it all in balance. The divine masculine, the divine feminine. Our native tribes out here in Montana have 7 genders, okay? Indigenously, they had 7 genders. So everybody was doing their thing. Everybody was contributing. If you were hyper masculine, if you were hyper feminine, didn't matter. There was a place for you in the tribe. The only time there wasn't a place for you in the tribe is if you compromised the tribe. Okay? And there were people still born with sociopathic or psychopathic problems with the brain, probably less so, but because we didn't have all the chemicals and crap that we do now. However, I'm putting all of this out there, okay, because we've gotten to a place where we demonize everybody for everything in 5 seconds. And some people are just shits, you guys. And they do need their crappy behavior called out because they have a spirit lesson to be accountable for those things. However, to say everybody's evil, to say men are evil or women are evil or trans people are evil or gays are evil, non-binary people are evil, Muslims are evil. I mean, this must stop. This has got to stop. I can't even believe in 2025 I am seeing some of the posts I see on social media, especially about different religions. That just kills me. I'm like, really? Are we going to piss in the wind about this? I have a really, 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 really super, super, super close sister bestie friend who I would just, that old saying, I'd punch somebody in the throat for you. This is somebody I'd punch in the throat for. And of course, I'm heavy into universe. I'm heavy into the actual universal conscious God, not the human formed, I'm an angry white man with my crooked finger penalizing you, like really bent out of shape middle management that didn't get their Christmas bonus. I mean, so we have this really different way of looking at the world. And my bestie was raised Mormon. Okay. So my bestie truly does not had a negative experience with spirituality and religion for her. Okay. And that's not to suggest Mormonism is not the way to go for people. I'm saying for my friend that it didn't work for her. Probably when she came out gay and faxed her parents at their mission office that she was gay, that probably was not the greatest, but oh well, we live and learn. Anyway, so my friend was saying, you know what I don't understand? And I said, what? We were having cocktails one day and shooting the crap. And she says, I don't understand why everybody, all you people who believe in your God, have to have an argument about whose sky daddy is bigger and better. It sounds like kids on a playground. My daddy's better than your daddy. My daddy could beat up your daddy. And she's like, you're all arguing about your invisible sky daddy. And it just made me laugh. I think I did spit some tequila. I started laughing and I said, well, first of all, I'm never going to argue with anybody that my belief system is superior to theirs because that's ridiculous. It's not true. Secondly, it's the belief system that works for me. And the fact that my friend doesn't need or have one works for her. Excellent, right? Let's just all be ourselves and do our thing, right? Why is this a big deal? So I'm looking, because this podcast is about finding our commonality and finding our joy. And I'm looking at this response to this brand new New York mayor, which I was so excited to see that because we had the midterms, okay? And of course, as I was talking about, I've been talking about this on this podcast for a year and a half before this, saying for those of you that are more of the conservative belief system, you're going to have a little bit of a shocker. We're going to have a lot more of the blue folks coming in at midterms because things are just out of balance and people are migrating to the center of human. That's what humans do. Threaten them for too long and we start to seek our commonality. That's the point we're in, guys. So this is why I'm saying I'm telling all these stories about backgrounds, okay? That's why I started with my goofy story about the Navy, because I am the biggest peace, love, harmony, ride a whale, hug a tree, pet a koala bear person you're ever going to find. I, in my home, am catching the wasps that are in my house and putting them outside. My wife is like, why are you doing that? I'm now apparently ridiculously allergic to wasp venom because I've been stung by them a couple times. But whatever, they're not out to get me. So I just catch them and put them outside. So that's me. Okay. And my Taurus wife is like, just smash it. I'm like, you can't smash it because it sends out pheromones and a last minute signal of help, I need help. And wasps from a 15-mile radius will come looking for it. That's actually true. So just put it outside. What an analogy, right? Sometimes it's not the best idea to smash something because then the hive gets rattled and here they come. I mean, look at the shooting of content creator Charlie Kirk. Boy, that rattled the hive, right? We don't need to kill things that we don't understand or agree with. It's not the way to go. Anyway, back to the New York mayor. So, I was really heartened to see this mayor from New York who was elected pretty resoundingly. And I'm sure you've been reading about Zoran. I love his name, you guys. Zoran Mamdani. Mamdani. Isn't that beautiful? Zoran Mamdani. And my God, there's people in New Jersey having a cow. There are people in Indiana freaking out. Oh, Muslims. Oh, we got a Muslim mayor. Oh, I can't believe the freak out. Zoran Mamdani. I mean, honestly, this guy, okay, is really super awesome. He's 34 years old. He is the youngest New York mayor since the late 1800s. He's coming in. The Democratic Party gave him a big nod to run, and I'm not sure if New York's mayoral campaign is partisan or isn't partisan. I don't know, but I know the Democrats gave him a big nod. So he's just this fascinating individual. And his name alone, Zoran Mamdani. I mean, it just sounds like a prince from somewhere, right? And it's linked to Persian and Arabic and Ghanaian backgrounds. And so the guy's name is really fascinating too, because Mamdani is, long story short, is a indication of Mohammedan, somebody who follows the teachings of Muhammad. And Zoran is light or light being. And his middle name, Kwame, apparently is sort of a nod to where his dad is from. And his dad really admired this freedom fighter from that area. And it's a traditional name of the Akan people from the ethnic Kwa group who lived primarily in Ghana, okay? And they also lived in the Ivory Coast and Togo and West Africa. So, I mean, we've got this universal person who is going to be the mayor of this heavily universal city, which is New York. Okay, so, I appreciate all the freakouts in Nebraska. I can appreciate the rural North Dakota meltdown over here, guys, or the Montana freakout. But let me tell you a little something. Montana, North Dakota, Indiana, we're not New York City, okay? And New York, if you've never been, is a lot like the Mos Eisley spaceport in Star Wars. It is the most phenomenal, unusual place where people from the entire globe of Earth, guys, the entire globe, live on top of each other, 8 million of them on a teeny tiny island. And it's all built straight up. There are canyons of brick in Manhattan and in New York City. So when we're talking about this human being who is elected to reflect the city, he's the mayor. He didn't get elected president, but my God, you'd think the heavy-duty, whitey-tighty religious righties are crapping their britches about this human being. And they're just acting like, oh my God, our country's been taken over by Muslims. I'm like, it's New York, you guys. Have you ever been to New York? Probably not. Because if you've been to New York, there is a heavy Muslim population in New York. There is a heavy Jewish population in New York. There's a Christian population in New York. There are religions we don't even talk about because Americans just can't stand it. They can't keep track of that much diversity anymore. Is it on a Netflix show? Or I don't know. I mean, that's our standard American anymore. It's so sad. So here's Zoran Mamdani, and he's getting up there to do his mayorship, and he is super positive. If you've actually heard this man speak, he is just talking about how they're going to make New York work for New Yorkers. Now, this really threatens the status quo that has to have a standardized white Christian way of doing everything. And that's not the status quo. In fact, the First Amendment of our Constitution disallows the United States from having any official religion, okay? So there are very, very misguided ideas about what we are as a country. But here is Zoran, and Mr. Mamdani is elected, and he is going to be doing a great job for New York because he is putting New Yorkers first. He's putting the city needs first. He's putting their diversity first. He's actually governing for the city. Now, he brings with him a great deal of the divine masculine. He's not in there trying to make everybody Muslim. It's the crazy Christians who are trying to make everybody Christian. He's just doing his thing. He just happens to be Muslim. So we look at this picture of this beautiful human being who's just coming forward. If you listen to him speak, you're like, wow, you should really be the president, dude. Wow. He's got this vision for how we can bring ourselves together. And there's all these folks out there who are settling into this 1850s version of capitalism versus socialism. And it just kind of kills me because you can have a free market. You can also have a fair market. The problem with our capitalism right now is it's not even free. It's owned by like 4 major corporations. So there's no free market there. That is a monopoly that these corporations have gotten around the Sherman Antitrust Act that was established in the 20s to break up monopolies. So I wouldn't be in this position because big money keeps trying to do this over and over again. And now they're just getting better at it. So when we look at this individual and we're finding joy and we're finding commonality, the thing that I think is ironic is, first of all, Indiana, why do you care what New York is doing? Why are you so threatened that this big city that you don't live in elected somebody who actually knows how the city is run and they're going to run it according to what they need? And to my more conservative friends out there, I've had a few conservative friends that I've noticed were kind of freaking out about old Zoran there. Aren't we about small government, my conservative friends? Aren't we about the Commonwealth of Virginia, having someone govern Virginia the way Virginia needs to be governed, not standardized to the standard American whatever? So this is small government. This is local New York government. And my God, the fearmongers are beating this drum, and they've poked a hole in the drum head now, actually. I heard the mallet go right through the drum head. Muslim, 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 Muslim. They broke the drum head with this one. What's interesting is there are so many people in the United States who have been normalized to the idea that pain, fear, hysteria, all of these things are being current with current events. And this is people across all belief systems. Christians, non-Christians, Republicans, Democrats, independents. We have been conditioned to be hysterical. And if you're hysterical, that means you're involved. I mean, tell me what sense that makes. If you're a person in the water and you're flailing and drowning and grabbing onto other people, you're drowning them too. This is no different. So here comes Zoran, gets elected. He's the mayor-elect of New York City. He's going to get sworn in. Oh, God, the country's up in arms. What's happening in New York on this tiny little island that has nothing to do with us? But what's happening? Oh, diversity. Oh, if diversity scares you this much, then we need to talk about the control issues that you have in your life. Because if we want to be happy and joyful, we can't control everything. And a lot of what we see with the attempted, and I say attempted because it's not only failed, but it's wildly in the process of it is just squeezing out of the evolutionary butthole here. It's just going to be the turd left on the sidewalk, this whole movement. I'm sorry to be gross, but it's true. It's waste. It's a waste product of our fear, this whole movement to standardize and go back to 1942 or 1955. At least in 1942, we were banded together as a country against a universal evil that was out in the world through World War II. But we're trying to go back to 1955, and it's not going to happen. It is a waste, an energetic waste byproduct is being passed through our system right now. Literally a great big turd, you guys. And so when I see people freaking out about the mayor of New York, I have to sit there and say, listen, you can't find joy in yourself if you have this many control issues. And I had a very interesting conversation with a guy at a bar one time. And he was just drunk and going on about, this was in rural Montana. And this man clearly is somebody, he was a farmer. He hadn't left his plot of land. Farmers don't really go and do things, you guys. The farm doesn't say, oh, why don't you take your 7-day vacation? There's no taking a 7-day vacation from feeding cows. They'll all be dead. Okay. So there's no taking a 7-day vacation from milking your cows. They'll all be dead. So there is no vacation for farmers. They are working 24/7. They never leave their plots of land. Very rarely do they leave. And when they do, they're stressing the whole time. So this man was a third generation farmer in my neck of the woods here in Montana, in the Clarks Fork Valley. And he was sitting with his beer, and his big getaway time from the farm is having a Miller Lite in this bar that I go to in Bridger. So he's sitting there doing his thing, and he's just prattling to the bartender. You know how drunk people are. And he's going on and on about this country's going to hell, and we got socialists and Marxists and capitalists and blah. And I'm listening to him, and I happen to know he's a farmer, right? And I said, "Can I ask you a question, sir?" And he's like, "Well, if you want an answer you don't like," is what he said. And I said, "Sure, that's fine." I said, I know you're a farmer. I went on about how respected his family is here and multi-generation. Actually, I think they're like 6th-generation farmers, honestly. And I said, blah, blah, blah. I said, "Why does it matter to you?" Because he was bitching about this new mayor. I said, "Why does it matter to you who's the mayor of New York City? Have you ever been to New York?" And he laughs. He belly laughs. He goes, "Well, hell no. Why the hell would I go there?" I said, "Well, exactly. Why the hell would you go there? Why do you care what their mayor is like? Why do you care?" And it just stopped him a minute. And he says, "Well, it's because it's where our whole country's going." I said, "Is it though? Because we live in Montana and I don't see any Zoran Mamdani's getting elected here. Is it really happening all over the country, or is it just happening in New York?" And he goes, "Well, are you," he went off, "are you a socialist lover? Are you a Marxist lover?" And he went on and on and on. And I looked at him, I said, "Sir, I'm a Montanan and I live and let live." And that just shut him right up, because that's our thing in Montana, live and let live. I said, "I'm a Montanan and I live and let live. I don't live in New York." And I said this. I said, "If you believe in small government, then you should support New York's decision, because that's what New York is about." And all he did was he kind of huffed at me, and he goes, "Well, yeah, that's why you'd never see me living there." And I said, "Well, I'm sure it would be hard to farm in New York." And he laughed. He ended up buying me a shot of tequila. We had a fine conversation. But it drew to his attention, our habit is to attack something that's different and to bitch about it. And that does not bring joy, guys. How many times have we gone on to social media and of course, I will say this till I'm blue in the face. I'm sorry if you're tired of hearing it, but I'm just going to keep saying it because we need to hear it. Did you know that the average human being needs to hear a message, at least in America, 20 times before we actually decide it's true? That's a marketing statistic. An American needs to hear something 20 times before they actually internalize it as a truth. 20 times. If it is a new concept or a positive change. A new concept or a positive change needs to be heard by an American person 20 times. Notice how I see what I did there? I just keep repeating that. And did you know that in the same way, an American person can hear one negative or scary thing once and believe it? That's the nature of our DNA. That's the nature of this multi-generational trauma in this country. We can hear a crappy thing one time and, the sky is falling, it's falling, But we have to hear 20 times that Zoran Mamdani isn't going to come and steal your way of life from New York, where he lives. Where he's a mayor. He's not a political candidate for national anything. He's a mayor of a tiny little island called Manhattan. Really? So what gets me here is that it's hard to find joy when we hear something one time and become hysterical about it. And I've got some really, really super, I respect these people a lot. They have since stopped talking to me. I've got some super lefty friends, heavy duty lefty friends that just feel like I'm a suck up. They think I am a moderate suck up who just says things on my podcast so I don't rock the boat, so I can get sponsors. That's what they think. And I'm like, well, I'm afraid you don't know me very well because this is just who I am. I strive for balance in all things. And they said, well, how can you strive for balance in this, authoritarian blah regime, blah, blah. And I said, I've never once said I support Donald Trump. Not one time. But if you want me to hate the guy, I'm not going to do it because he's a broken human being. He's got severe dementia. He craps his pants on a regular basis. Not even kidding you guys. The guy wears Depends. I mean, it's so sad. And I don't need to hate him to feel good about who I am and to feel good about being an American. Because that, to me, hating people that are different from me is not being American. Call me a sucker, call me a loser if you want to. But I still believe in the ideal of America that we've never quite hit. We've never quite got there. We keep shaving little pieces off of the statue. Just one little whittle at a time. We keep getting there, one little chip of marble at a time. We're getting to the beautiful image in the center of it. We haven't gotten there yet. And I believe when I look inside of this individual, I've never met Zoran Mamdani, but when I look inside of this person, I see someone who puts the needs of the many ahead of the needs of the few. And if we would just do that in the United States, then the few would rise because we're not giving them a hand out, you guys. We're giving people a hand up. We all need a hand up. And even this idea of I'm a completely self-made human being is ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Society does have biases. American society has biases. It's true. It's real. I am not going to get the same treatment from a bank as a white male will. I'm a white woman. A black woman is not going to get the same treatment at the bank as I, the white woman, will. Okay? Neither will the Asian woman. Neither will the Latin woman. So there is a bias here in this nation, and we have an opportunity to correct those biases, and I think we should continue to correct the biases. And I think socially and sociologically, with our Gen Z, our millennials, Gen X, there's some Gen Xers that have really gone down the hole of assholism, and shame on you, Gen X, because we were the generation that we were standing in the gap. We were the firewall for AIDS not spreading. We were the firewall for breaking down the man and corporations that owned everything. We were standing on the shoulders of the boomers who had started doing this, okay? And so we were continuing to be the firewall. So again, shame on you, Gen X, if you've become the get off my lawn people. Shame on you. Our generation was here. X, think about an X. To stop, you will not pass, you shall not pass, for systems that no longer support the whole. That is our generational lesson. So if you're a Gen Xer that's telling everybody to get off your lawn, you may be noticing that life is a little stressful for you. You might be noticing that things are a little harder for you, or that you feel awfully alone. Well, we're Gen X. We always feel alone. But I mean, you might be noticing that because generationally, though, we don't have to agree with everybody, and we don't have to throw our door open to every single human being in the world. The get off my lawn exceptionalism is not aspected well from Generation X's perspective. Now, we can have standards, we can have rules, okay? But the get off my lawn thing, it doesn't work for this generation, guys. So anyway, I'm, again, down a rabbit hole. But the point being is that I have this friend of mine talking about biases in the country. And this friend happened to be a white male, and he really did come from absolutely nothing. I mean, his mama was, the typical idea of what stereotypically you'd see as a white single mom who was basically having babies, and those babies would produce federal benefits and whatnot, and that was the culture she was born into. So it wasn't like she had this wide array of experience. Okay, and this is something else we need to talk about real quick because we're talking about finding joy in the country and getting off of blame. And look how popular it is right now to blame poor people for everything. People with no money. When actually the people with no money are not determining the course of our nation. The people with all the money are determining the course of our nation. Yet the people with all the money don't want us looking at them. They want us looking at these, they want to them. They want to others, those other people, them, those people. So my friend's mom had been born into a cycle of poverty where the example that was set for her by her grandma and her mom, they literally said, and the example that was set for them was that your job is to have babies and raise the babies, and the government sends you money to do that. That was the culture. Now, before a bunch of you out there that are listening to this say something like, see, that's the problem. Look at these people with their hand out. Guys, go back to the word culture. Okay? If it's your culture to work 90 hours a week, you're going to work 90 hours a week because that's what you were taught. You were taught that that's how you support yourself. You were taught that there is validity and identity in doing that. It's not healthy, but you're going to do it. It's your culture. So when we look at different cultures and when we have the culture of poverty, some, not all, some of the people in the culture of poverty, and quite frankly, a majority of them are white people, you guys. White people are the ones that are, quote, having the babies and taking the government money. Statistically, look at it if you don't believe me. Google it yourself. White people are the ones doing this, okay? Overall. So what we've got is I've got my friend, and he came from, his mama was one of these folk. And he had different interests, and he got interested in business and doing other things. So my white male friend went on to do pretty well for himself with a software company. And he would tell this story all the time, and he became very, I would say there was a part of my friend that was very he's no longer with us, unfortunately. He came out as a gay man. He succumbed to an illness that was AIDS-based years ago. However, at the time, he really had a lot of self-loathing issues, and he literally vitriolically could not stand, I would even say had a hatred for poverty and people who lived in poverty. And he talked to his mom, but barely, he called her white trash. He was so appalled at where he came from. And he was very, very happy that he said, he would always say, I did this myself. I lifted myself up by my bootstraps and blah, blah. And this was years ago. And one day I looked at him and I got sick of it. I just got sick of it because this guy as a white male had privileges I was never going to have, period. And especially in, the 90s. So I looked at him and I said, do you ever like actually just sit back and enjoy? This is before privilege was even a word, you guys. I said, do you ever notice that you can do things that I can't do? And he's like, well, what are you talking about? I said, you're a dude. And I was at that time trying to get a bank loan to get some recording gear to expand Pope Jane's ability to self-record. And the bank just laughed me right out the back door. And he went in and got a personal loan to go buy power tools. They would give him $15,000 to buy power tools for his garage, but they would not give me $15,000 for music gear for a business that I could prove made money. They just wouldn't. So then I tried to get a personal loan, and they said, well, we're not going to loan on music gear. But they gave him $15,000 in the late 90s to go buy power tools. So I was a little pissed about the whole thing. And so I'm saying to him, do you ever notice that you get stuff that I don't? And he's like, what are you talking about? No, I don't. I said, yes, you do. And here you're wandering around saying you're this self-made man. And we kind of got into a little spat and didn't talk for a few months after that. But basically I said, are you hearing yourself? You're calling your mom white trash? You're the self-made man. You got out of poverty. Well, that's all true. And not about his mom being white trash, but congratulations about getting out of poverty. However, you're not self-made. You have a leg up. You have a bias I don't even have. You're a white dude. You can go do stuff I can't do. And your mom trying to crawl out of that pit of poverty with no education. His mom could only read to about a 4th grade level. I mean, how is she supposed to pick herself up by her proverbial bootstraps? This is a human being. He would tell me stories of that culture of poverty. They didn't even understand standard hygiene practices because why? You never left the house. You took a bath every 2 weeks, whether you needed it or not. And I said, this is a culture that your mother was born into. And why do you fault her? Because she's not going to be able to crawl out. He says, well, I made the choices to get out of it, and I did this, and I did that. And I said, yeah, good for you. You should be proud of that. But you do have an advantage. She doesn't. You're a dude. And that did not go over well. And I think he knew that somewhere, but his narrative of I'm the self-made man was so important. And for all intents and purposes, he really was, okay? But he couldn't even find his joy in his success. That's the point of my story. He couldn't find his joy in his success because he was so busy hating his mother and hating himself for where he came from. And it was all negative, hateful hate. And that was another thing he told me about the culture of poverty. They just sit around and dish and gossip and pick on others and pick down people so they can feel like they have a purpose or an identity in that moment, just like humans do. And apparently when you don't have a job pulling you off to go do something or whatever, you've got more time on your hands. So you've got to figure out how you can stand out in your community at that point. So, I mean, he couldn't even find joy in his success because we are trained in this country to be angry and negative, and that makes us an authority. We are trained in this country when someone else comes in and tries to tell you that there is something positive that we could be looking at or something, there's a bright side of the angle there that we could all be focusing on to work on the issue to solve the problems of hunger, healthcare, of people who are, you guys, in a systematic culture of poverty and have been for how many generations? You know, when, quote, welfare first came out, end quote, it was needed and it's still needed. And just because some people need it does not mean that everybody has their hand out. And wouldn't it be wonderful if we had a way to go into some of these communities who have been steeped in a culture of poverty for 100 years and say, hey guys, anybody else want to try some new stuff? Ever thought about doing this or that? And get the folks who would like to try something else and provide them a hand to even understanding, okay, before we go out, guys, before we're going to go out and get a job, the first thing we need to do is make sure you're going to leave the house. How many of you have driver's licenses? Do you know how many people in the culture of poverty don't even have driver's licenses? They don't vote. They don't vote. Yeah, we've got these billionaires telling us that we need to hate those people because they're the problem. They don't even vote. A lot of those folks don't even vote because they don't drive. And a lot of the places that they live have done away. A lot of them are red states, Kentucky, Alabama, Louisiana. And it makes it difficult for those folks to get out of the house to go vote. They make mail-in voting hard. So can you imagine? Can you imagine the nation we would have if we could offer maybe somebody who is in that culture, if they wish to get out of that culture? Can you imagine saying, well, what we're going to do is first thing what I got to do, guys, is we're going to get in the habit of taking a shower at least every other day, okay? Got to do that. We got to get that laundry done because if you're going to leave the house, this is what folks out here are going to be expecting. And my friend who talked about growing up in this culture of poverty, one of the things he said is, I said, do you go home very often? And he said, no, I never go home. And I said, why? He goes, I can't stand the smell of it in that house. It stinks. It smells like body odor and rotting garbage and old dirty laundry and cat piss. He's like, I can't even go in. And he's like, and it smells like cigarette smoke. And my mom is really overweight and she's sitting in the corner smoking and she wants to give me a hug. And I love my mom, but she stinks. She smells like body odor and God knows what and cigarette smoke and sweat. And he's like, I just have such a hard time. Her hair's super greasy. And I asked him, I said, does your mom have a history of depression? And he didn't want to talk about that. There was obviously some untreated mental issues there. But I mean, he wouldn't even go home because he didn't like the smell of it. And I understand that. Yeah, I said, have you ever talked to your mom about any of this? And he goes, oh, she won't listen to me. And basically what I was to glean from that is they would fight about it. And, no mom wants to be told she's not looking her best by her son who looks amazing and smells amazing. And that's pretty hard for us ladies, right? So, but do you see all the tiny details here? Because we can get lost in every one of the details and the weeds of these stories. Or we can decide where our joy would be in that story. Where do you find joy in that? Maybe listening to mom. Maybe mom had a good day. Maybe mom baked some cookies she wanted to talk about, and that was her joy. Allowing people their joy is important. Not having to crap on everybody just because we were taught in the United States that aggression and negativity equal domination, which equals power, which equals being involved. God. I'm not unaware of the hideousness on this earth, you guys. Unfortunately, my particular skill set spiritually does not allow me to tune out things I don't like. In fact, it all comes in 1,000%. So I do see the ugliness. I see the one-sidedness. I see the ignorance. I see the fear. I see all of it. To the best of my ability. I'm a human, but you know what I'm saying. I see all of it. I feel personally all of it. And I guess maybe it's a survival mechanism somewhat, but I think more than that, what happens as I look at all of it is we have this common need to not be afraid. Yet what we're doing is continuing to create fear. And we're doing it because we think that makes us in the know. And we're doing it because we're afraid. And if we talk about what we're afraid of, then maybe somebody else out there can talk about what they're afraid of. And through discussion, we can dispel the fear, right? But gang, we've got to be careful with deciding this is what creates commonality with one another, because it really doesn't. And we're seeing right now in the last few minutes of this podcast, the whole point of this is being in joy is very important. Finding the joy where we can find it is important. Okay, if you're somebody that thinks that Zohran Mamdani is a terrible human being because he's Muslim, you know what? Can you at least try to be happy for the New Yorkers that actually understood that he would govern their city the way that their city runs, even if you don't understand it? Can we start to give away the imbalanced portion of the masculine, which turned into the imbalanced patriarchal? That is, it has to be my way, my stuff, mine. We are not the Kurgan. There doesn't need to just be only one. This is not Highlander, everybody. So, can we just accept that maybe that works for that person and be joyful for the people that picked that? And can we sit back and see if that works well for New York? And the fact of the matter is, guys, it's going to work great for New York City. Zohran Mamdani, if somebody doesn't shoot him, and God bless you, please, nobody do that, is going to show the whole country that working together and working with our differences is the way that we can create more joy, create more economic stability. No, it's not going to create a socialist country. It's going to create a country where a city that could, I'm hoping we adopt this in the country, you guys, but it's going to create a city that runs well for the people who live there. And let me tell you who doesn't want anybody to see a big example of that. Stage 4 capitalism does not want anybody to see that. And when I hear people say, well, I'm a capitalist, I'm like, do you even know what that means, dude? Well, it means free market enterprise. I'm like, does it though? Because there's a really big piece of sociopathic behavior in pure capitalism. Pure capitalism will capitalize on people, land, resources, emotionality. Capitalism, unchecked, unfettered capitalism, is a sociopathic endeavor. Sorry. Because, hey, have you ever gotten laid off at a job? It's just business. It's better for the bottom line. The bottom line belongs to capitalism. So we can have free market enterprise and have human free market enterprise. We can have free market enterprise that is not owned by a bunch of sociopathic billionaires that need us to not pay attention to human needs. They need us to equivocate the word capitalism with being an American. Guys, America is not set up to be a purely socialist country. And the Social Security that we all pay into in the government is not a government handout. That's your money that the government was holding in a savings account. So the fact that the government has been spending our Social Security, the fact that the government has been borrowing against it, the fact that they're, quote, cutting Social Security benefits, they don't get to do that. That would be like if the government went to your savings account and said, well, I'm sorry, Jane, we've decided you only get 1/3 of your savings account because we need the rest of it for a bunch of shit you didn't decide you wanted to pay for. That's what's happening with Social Security. And this is happening, I'm sorry, guys, but it's the Republicans who are trying to use that money for a bunch of capitalist goals. They're trying to use all of our money for capitalist goals and veiling it in other funding for this or funding for that, or we're going to take this and we're going to fund SpaceX with it. Guys, it's not the government's money, it's the people's money. It's your money. So when people say that Social Security is a handout, they are ignorant and they don't understand what the hell the situation is. This is also why a lot of religious extremists and white nationalists want people to remain ignorant. So they don't understand what's going on. So to say I'm a capitalist is American, it's not really that American. I mean, it would be if it was 1850. America is the great experiment, guys. It was never intended to stay static. The founders of this country crafted a scaffolding on which all possibility could be built. And we are intended to evolve. And we might try different things culturally that work or don't work. We just put them to the side and keep evolving. And to evolve our society means to evolve past that 1825 conquest, that god-awful, I'm going to manifest my own destiny, manifest destiny outlook of capitalism. And I always say this, we closed the North American continent that is America from coast to coast in 80 years because of the railroad. And then we tore it up and we herded up the indigenous people and killed them and forced them to walk the Trail of Tears, and thousands of them died along the way to get them somewhere else because we wanted that land. That is capitalism. We are capitalizing on the resources. And so I would personally like to separate the word free market economy from the ideal of capitalism. Because capitalism is dated and it's not going to be able to continue to move into the future. And people who don't understand the difference between capitalism and the free market economy are just going to hold on to that and say, but it's American, I don't want to be a socialist. We'll never be a socialist country, guys. Not for 200 years. Maybe in 200 years we could be. But our systems aren't set up that way. Our systems just aren't. But we can take care of our people. And in taking care of one another, there is joy. And, people aren't that happy when they're not working towards their purpose. I have a very dear friend who is actually a moderate in how they look at things. They're a moderate Democrat. That's how they would label themselves. And they're like, look, I don't want people to have handouts. We need to stop handing things out to people because people aren't trying. And I said, well, I think people are getting discouraged from trying because trying takes a hell of a lot more time and money, and a lot of people just don't have that. So people are getting discouraged and they're needing help right now. And my friend said, well, but the help turns into a habit, and now we're supporting all these people who should be working. And I had to bring to my friend's attention that a lot of the friends that I do have, they are working. They are working 3 jobs. So single moms working 3 jobs who are receiving SNAP benefits because the 3 jobs don't pay them enough to take care of their rent and their 2 kids and the childcare because they have to work 3 jobs. Okay? So this idea of where do we find our joy? The first thing we can do is stop blaming everybody for everything that we're afraid of. Are you afraid you won't get yours? Did you want something that you just didn't get? So now you got to blame other people for getting it? Are you 5? I mean, stop with that behavior. Yes, we all have our resentments, but guys, we can't find joy if we're chronically spitting and pissing through a wall of resentment because we actually bought the big fat American dream, which kind of was never going to be able to come to fruition past 1963. Okay? So, I mean, why are we mad at the world? Because our expectation wasn't met. Stop it. See where we're at. What in your life gives you joy? Not everything you don't have. What do you have? And, I do get a little sensitive about this because, people's pain is relative, you guys. I have some clients who are very enormously wealthy people, billionaire people. And those clients will call and they are so freaking unhappy. They are so unhappy. They could do anything they want, but guess what? They don't have a sense of purpose. They just have all this money. Money doesn't solve it. So we end up talking about purpose. How can they go out there? And then because they have all this money and maybe it's generational wealth, they don't know, they don't have that grit to get up and go. They don't have the self-confidence. They don't have that ability to just push themselves through something uncomfortable because they've never had to. So when that fear hits them about going to join a board or putting together a resume, they just stop. They're like, oh, well, no, I think I'll go to yoga. And then I get another call and they're like, oh God, I have no purpose. And I'm like, you have a spirit lesson to push yourself into a place where you feel accomplished. So guys, guess what? There's a lot of super hyper rich people who are not really contributing to our economy either. Their purpose isn't established either because they've never had to establish a purpose and it makes them miserable. So can we stop blaming? Because if we can stop blaming and shaming, if we can stop othering, if we can stop getting 5-year-old mad because, well, he has something I don't have and he got it for free and I didn't get it for free. Didn't ya? Well, most of us didn't either. So suck it up, stop your whining. And what do you have that person doesn't have? Citizenship? A roof over your head? Warm water? Ice not kicking your door in because you have brown skin? I mean, what do you have to be grateful for? Because we have so much to be grateful for. Are you alive? Does your body move? Can you see? If you're someone who was born without sight, can you hear? If you're someone listening to this podcast through those devices that come through your fingertips and make it physical impulses, did you eat something incredible today that made you happy? We must find our joy because in our joy, we find our commonality with our fellow humans. And what makes us joyful is when things are working. What makes us joyful is when we're all happy together. And no, that's not going to probably happen for all of us to be happy together, but we can certainly stop blaming and shaming and othering to be able to come to the middle of all of the human needs. I don't mean the middle of the political spectrum. If you want to take it that way, go for it. Come together in the middle of our human needs. We can still have our opinions. We can still work for the good of all, guys. And I'll just say this, sociopathic capitalism, sociopathic consumerism is not designed for the good of all. It is designed for the machine that is manufacturing the widget. And all it's trying to do is keep itself alive. It is the most singularly selfish modality that one could possibly imagine. It's true. And if you are running a nation, if you're running a nation, we can't run a nation like that because we've got, guys, this isn't, I know there's a lot of people out there that have this 1800s fantasy of just no rules and running across the country and shooting whoever you want and throwing them in a ditch and taking their cowpoke and off you go and you've got their cows and you've got their horses and nobody knows and you're an outlaw. That is a fantasy. Those times were hard. They were genocidal. They were destructive. Tons of people died during those times. And that is not America, you guys. America is an ideal. It's not a cowboy fiction book. America is an ideal that was built on hope, co-creation, evolution, setting a global standard for modalities that have never been done before. We're falling asleep on the job because we're misinterpreting rage and anger as being involved, as caring. If you really want to be an American, then get back to the business of evolving our nation with solutions for everybody, not just the people you relate with, not just the people you understand, for everybody. We've not gotten there yet. We can still have laws that even the president is supposed to adhere to. We can still have laws. We can still have societal norms that make things run well. And let's just start celebrating. Let's have joy in the differences that we all have. Because the person who knows how to lay the bricks is not me. And the bricklayer is needed. The person who knows how to translate angels may not be Joe Blow, but we need those people too. We need all of us here. Because this is an experiment. So find your joy. Stop shaming and blaming and othering. And let us go forward and continue to truly work on this social experiment called the United States. Because we're worth it, you guys. Your neighborhood's worth it. Your family's worth it. Don't let a few assholes ruin it for everybody, guys. Come on. Okay. I love you all. I got to get going. I got to go pack and get out there and do my karaoke for the USS Ronald Reagan. So everybody, you go have a fantastic week, and I will see you next podcast.